when I started reading these articles in 2018 about the farmers abandoning their farms, I was like, what could possibly be wrong? I mean, we're doing great. We're
Mm.
doing great. I mean, everything's wonderful. We're charging somewhere between $5 and $7 for a cup of coffee. Our franchisees are making money. How could it be? How could it be that producers have to walk off their farms? You know? And we didn't really come to an understanding until our first farm visit. And it just came at us like a tidal wave.
Hey friends, it's Lee Safar here with some exciting news. The introduction to regenerative coffee farming workshops are now available on demand in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. These workshops are designed to give you actionable insights into the future of coffee farming through regenerative agriculture. Whether you're a coffee producer, roaster, cafe owner, or just passionate about coffee sustainability. For coffee producers, the workshop is available for just $10, and for everyone else, it's $20, a small price to pay for knowledge that could transform your understanding of what it's going to take to grow coffee from now on. Led by our incredible professors Angela Barrero, Murilo Bettarello, Felipe Croce, Carlos Ordóñez, and João Araújo, the workshop is packed with practical knowledge and strategies to help coffee farmers and the entire coffee industry adapt to the challenges of climate change, rising costs, and market demands. If you're a business owner, this workshop is a great and affordable way to inform your employees about the challenges ahead while also supporting Mapper Forward. This is also a great workshop to share with or gift to your coffee producers. Head to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the description to purchase the on-demand version and start your journey towards a more sustainable coffee future today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of the final series for 2024. I am really, really excited about this series because I feel like I have met my coffee soulmates, and I'm excited for you guys to hear this conversation. I am thrilled to introduce people who I'm sure most of you know, Bob and Michelle Fish, to the podcast for the first time. Welcome, guys. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Great to be
Thrilled
here.
to be here.
In this series, we're talking about behind the black curtain of coffee. And before we dive into this conversation, there's just something that I want to say. We're recording this on the 12th of December, and this week was a big, big deal for a particular group of people, which I happen to be a part of. For those who don't know, my family, even though I was born in Australia, my family is from Syria. Our heritage goes back to, the beginning of time in Syria. And this is a big, big week for anyone who was in Syria because the Assad regime was dismantled this week. And this was a regime that the dismantling of this regime really did remind me and help me draw parallels as I was watching this unfold with what's happening in the coffee industry. And it happened at a time when before that had happened, we had decided about the things that we were going to talk about in this series. And it really had already planted this kind of thing in my consciousness about what happens when we just go with the rules that we have been told exist. And the Syrian people for decades now, like more than 5 decades, folks, have been oppressed by a regime that led them to believe that there was nothing better for them, which is similar to what coffee producers have been told. And there seems to be something very, fortuitous or quite eerie that this should be happening at the same time that the sea market is doing the kinds of things that it's doing, that is forcing a new reality for all of us. And as that reality becomes realized, people who are participating and partaking in the fuckery of oppression are being forced out. And I can tell you, as a Syrian who's not living in Syria, but who has been witnessing secondhand the oppression of these people and the complete horrible things that have happened to people in Syria for decades, the elation of people being able to determine their own future for the first time in 2 generations. That the opportunity that coffee producers are being offered right now, there's no going back after this. They're not going to give you the opportunity again to fuck with their future. And I hope that there are coffee producers that are listening to this that really see themselves in what's happening with the Syrian people. And the Syrian people in Syria are aware that this isn't like it. Like, it's not just because he's been driven out of the country, everything's fine now. There is a lot of hard work that needs to be done to make sure that the building that comes after this is done with their heads, it's done with their hearts, and it's done with their hands. And so for coffee producers who are perhaps 5th or 6th generation that have finally seen the opportunity that their ancestors didn't have, don't waste this moment. I invite you to take a look at what has happened to the Syrian people and create the same kind of opportunities that they're going to have to create moving forward. And so for all my other brothers and sisters that are Syrian out there, مبروك والحمد لله على السلامة والله يطول عمركم والله يوفقكم. Basically what I said is congratulations. We're grateful to God for this time, and I don't even believe in God. But if there is one, I'm grateful that it has created this opportunity. And I wish you peace, and may God grant you the strength to meet the next moment, is basically the blessing that we want. There is no mistake. Like, it's just uncanny that these things are happening all at the same time around the world, and there is definitely consciousness shifts that are going on. And I didn't want to miss the moment to mark it in our history. So that being said, boy, oh boy, do we have 2 people that are about to speak the fuck out of this subject to you folks. Bob and Michelle. When I tell you these folks are my soulmates in coffee, I'm not even slightly joking. So tell us about Biggby. Tell us your story so that we can get started and move into the really good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's really short. I started a cafe with a business partner in 1995, pretty early in specialty coffee. Matter of fact, it was called gourmet coffee at that time. So 1 unit in 1995, second unit in 1997, and then we irrationally decided to start franchising after that. And that's led us up to today, which is now, as of Tuesday, it was 422 units open and operating in 13 states. And, there's another 100 on the way, signed contracts, because we're 100% franchise. So plenty of momentum in our business. But the other thing, and this is what Michelle and I do, we co-founded something called One Big Island in Space with 2 Gs. And that entity, I should let my wife explain.
In 2018, we embarked on this journey to change the way Biggby sourced its coffee. So we're going to be talking about the black curtain here in a minute, but we were all the way on the other side of it. Bob had been in the coffee business since 1995. He'd never been on a coffee farm, never been involved in green buying, never looked at that side of the business. An expert in what happens to the coffee once it gets to the roaster and then on into the retail chain. But he'd been doing a lot of reading, and it certainly was becoming clear to anybody paying attention that coffee was in trouble. Farmers were walking off their land. The problems associated with climate change and what it does in the field to coffee, the way you have to farm, the investments you have to make, these things were all driving farmers off their land. And so we decided that maybe there was a better way. Maybe we could try to to create a direct trade model that really is the end user, that isn't the roaster, because so much of direct trade is sort of categorized by the roaster and the producer having a relationship. We are the marketplace. Biggby sells around 50 million cups of coffee a year. We sell it by the cup, not by the pound. So it's about putting cups into consumers' hands. And if we could form a relationship with a producer where we get rid of as many people in the middle as we can, some hands in the middle are necessary, many are not. And the more you study the coffee value chain, the more you understand the word you like to use, the fuckery that happens there. So get rid of as much of the fuckery as possible and push those savings down to the producer. But more than that, also disengage from the C market, because the C market has nothing to do with cost of production on any given farmer's land. And if we're going to look for farmers who are investing in their people, practicing regenerative agriculture, and doing something to lift their communities up, all of those things have a cost associated with it, in addition to what it costs to farm coffee. So we look at each producer's individual economics, and we build our pricing model based on what they need to be sustainable. Pay for some of that by getting rid of the fuckery, but pay for some of that by just paying some more. And then the idea is to establish lifetime partnerships with these producers so that they can know with surety going forward that they can make 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 20-year plans for their farms, for their families, because we're going to be there with our marketplace. We bring the marketplace. So that's it. So it's been since 2018. We have 4 partnerships. Takes us a long time. And we have traveled. I don't even want to start to count up the miles, because I think I'll get tired if I add it all up. It's best just to keep running, not to look behind you.
And one of the things I would say is, when I started reading these articles in 2018 about the farmers abandoning their farms, I was like, what could possibly be wrong? I mean, we're doing great. We're doing great. I mean, everything's wonderful. We're charging somewhere between $5 and $7 for a cup of coffee. Our franchisees are making money. How could it be? How could it be that producers have to walk off their farms? And we didn't really come to an understanding until our first farm visit, and it just came at us like a tidal wave. What was going on out there? But in terms of like what the black curtain is, I think there's several levels of it. One is simply there's the consumer, right? And the consumer, I think, thinks coffee comes from a roaster, not from a farmer, right? And they identify with that, whether it's Maxwell House or, Stumptown or Biggby coffee or Paramount coffee or whoever is roasting coffee. I think that's where they think coffee comes from, short of some fairly well-dressed guy from Colombia that walks around with a donkey and a bag of coffee. And otherwise they have no concept of what's going on there. But from an industry perspective, I would say even roasters, and the question is whether it's willful or unwillful, are completely ignorant about what's going on in the producing countries versus the consuming countries. And many of them think they're doing a good job. And many of them think that they're participating. Many of them think they are doing direct trade, but none of them are. But there's intentionality in keeping both the consumer and then the next level down, the roaster, uninformed about what's going on out there. And what's going on out there is systemic poverty and contribution to climate change. Flat out, that's what's going on. Intentional. What's going on is economic colonialism versus a standing army version colonialism. Okay. And when you go there and you see, you touch, you feel it, you understand it almost immediately, right? But nobody in this industry would like you to know that.
Let's touch on the willful or unwillful, because this is this goes to the heart of, like, it is the difference between someone grabbing the black curtain and opening up and them saying, well, I'm just looking at a black curtain. Why do I care what's behind it?
Yeah.
Let's explore this willful or unwillful, because I'm a firm believer of when you're ignorant of something that you know that may exist, you're complicit in it either way.
Totally.
So
Do you want to?
whomever.
Yes, there's a lot of money made in coffee, right? A lot of people make a lot of money in coffee, including us. We've done quite well in coffee. And money is its own sort of, has its own gravitational pull. So this idea of willful or unwillful ignorance, if you were a roaster and you're making some good money and you have this inkling maybe that something's funky on the other side, your desire to want to look at it is might be compromised by your own need to feed your own family, right? I think that some people have decided that they're going to take that on by focusing at the highest level of quality, like the 90s in the Q grade world, and that they're going to go make things just for those farmers. They're going to
You mean those rich farmers?
Form directory. Some of them are rich. It's really hard to make a good living in coffee, no matter where you are. But at the 90s, it takes a lot more investment. It takes a lot more work. All of these fancy processes, anaerobic, all of that stuff that's all very, very hip now. That stuff takes more work. And we've met plenty that are in it that are barely breaking even. But most coffee is not that. Most of the coffee that people drink in the world is actually below 80 even. And nobody's looking at what's happening to those producers. They've just turned the spotlight to the very top of the quality equation. But the real impact is happening, people who are just trying to struggle to make a living, right? And the way coffee is bought has an impact. People talk about impact coffee. They only talk about the good impacts. We're doing all of this fabulous work. The fact is, the way you're buying coffee right now, if you are not involved in forming real relationships or really knowing what you're doing, it is creating poverty. It is perpetuating poverty, crushing poverty, disease.
Help people understand
illness.
What you mean exactly by crushing poverty, because when I tell people that there's sex trafficking and there's slavery and they don't believe me. Go ahead and tell them. It's real, right?
But before you get started on that, that's the willful component.
Right.
Right. And I would suggest for a moment that it is willful. It's convenient to be willful. Willfully ignorant. So it's not accidental. It's convenient to be that way. But yes, go on and let's talk about what we mean by poverty.
I'll give you an example. We were in Ethiopia at a washing station. We'd been brought there by a company that owned the washing station, but their primary business was actually they were computer manufacturers. Because this is a whole side topic, but the way coffee works in Ethiopia, because it's a hard currency export, is and it's a net importing country. Hard currency is what everybody's after, and coffee is one of the ways they get that in Ethiopia. Now, on paper, this company was doing good things for their producers, right? That's why we were there. They told us that they were paying above the national average. They were investing in communities. They were doing all of this. So we go to the washing station and we have an opportunity to actually talk to a couple of their small producers. We met this one gentleman who has 11 children and a mother-in-law that live with him that he's supporting in coffee. And the company that brought us is telling us very proudly that they're building a school in that man's community. By the way, side topic, I asked them, so you're doing that in conjunction with the government? Oh, no. Actually, what they're doing is they're building a building that will probably never have teachers in it. Because, it's in isolation. It just looks really good in the brochure when they talk about what they're doing in communities. What the fuck, right? Right there. What the fuck? So we asked this gentleman how he feels about the school. And he says, I don't need a school. I need potable water. My children are getting sick. I don't have access to potable water. And so I asked them why are you building him a school? Well, everybody needs a school. This community needs a school. I asked him how much he made. He made from his cherry something like $387 for the year. That is his primary source of income in Ethiopia for 11 children and his mother-in-law. He can only afford to send one of his kids to school. So they picked the one that they thought was the smartest one, right? And they're sending him to school. Everybody else is working on the farm.
What?
Like, well, why do you not build a school and just give him the extra money, right? Just pay him more for his coffee. And they said to us with a straight face that if we do that, he'll just drink it.
What the
And
fuck?
my
do you
answer to
even
that is,
pay back to that?
there you have it. And this is a company that on paper says it's doing good things for producers. And my answer to that is, by the way, if he wants to drink it, he can drink it because he earned it. But I doubt very seriously that he will because he has 11 children and a mother-in-law that he supports with his coffee.
So we did ask that farmer, by the way, what does he think he should be paid or what does he need to be paid in order to survive, which was about 3x of what he was getting paid. And the people we were with, they just laughed out loud.
At him.
There. But yeah, we're talking about no electricity, no potable water, houses that you wouldn't put your dog in, the things of that nature. It is excessive. Rags for clothes, malnutrition, it's rampant.
How these farmers must be laughing at us when we talk about ridiculous shit like the sea market, when in actual fact, they're the ones that are growing the coffee.
I think they laugh about that. I mean, they do have access to that information. I think what they laugh out more is standards that we bring to the table from the global north and expect them to do those things in advance of making a purchase at the suggestion that the purchase will come at a higher price if they do those things. And then in fact, they might even take the risk to make those particular changes. And then the additional funds or money never really manifests. But even if it does, they're actually out more out of pocket from the changes that they had to make than what return on investment that they will get. But it is a system that is designed so that nobody wins. It is a system
by whom
designed so nobody wins.
Let's like really start to put some facts in here. This is tantamount to the idea of like they don't want this to happen. Here, there's a very clear they. Who is the theys? We don't have to name names, but we can put near enough like titles.
Sure. And what I would say is, when we got started in this, that it was our ignorance that allowed us to move forward with this idea. As we unfolded it, they said it couldn't be done. What are we talking about? The they in this is the coffee industry itself. And in my general articulation of that is the multinational companies that are running this, consuming most of the coffee, and those that are large exporters and so on and so forth. They would prefer that we just do this.
What do they benefit from producers not being thriving? Let me give some context to that. One would assume that if a coffee producer is doing well and they have a thriving business, that the big multinationals would have more of a supply and we wouldn't be in a situation that we're in today. So what do they benefit from the coffee producer being oppressed?
Well, the issue is between a producer who does the bulk of the work in the whole coffee value chain for a whole year in order to produce one product, and then we can go from exporter to importer. In between the boating people, brokers on the other side, roasters, and so on. Everybody's making money except the producer. And it keeps the producer on their heels at all times. At all times. It is that, I used the words earlier, what is the advantage? The advantage is you are getting labor for free. It's extractive. It is a version of colonialism that, again, doesn't use standing armies, doesn't actually use slaves, although we could say this is poverty or slavery in a form of poverty.
Economic slavery. Yeah.
Mhm.
Economic slavery. Okay. So that those that have a high degree of greed can live very, 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 very well.
This is
Period.
the
I would
Syrian
also
people.
like to-
100%. It's exactly the same.
Totally.
The Assad regime did not let them have access to power more than an hour a day. They got
Yeah.
internet an hour a day. They got hot running water an hour a day.
Yeah.
If you keep these people focused on the bare essentials,
Survival.
most
Yeah.
of these people are educated. They have degrees and MBAs and all of this kind of stuff. They're not worried about using that. They're trying to figure out how that they can get hot water.
Yeah.
What you're going to say, Michelle? I'm sorry.
So I would also add, so there's the multinationals that sort of, the broad industry of coffee, the multinationals.
Mhm.
But within, it is such a corrupt system that within countries, that corruption follows all the way through from national coffee associations, through tri-mills, through the corruption is baked into the pie. So it's not just the multinationals that are comfortable with economic slavery in the global South. Within a country, within the global South, people are exploiting at the top of the chain within that country all the way down to the producer. And they too have stepped into the role of colonizer within their own country.
Mhm.
And the way that their comfort level with poverty at the bottom end of that scale. And so it's the whole thing. It's not just the multinationals. It's within countries as well.
But Lee, you're right.
ahead.
Maslow says you need food, shelter, clothing.
Yeah.
After that, you need safety, security, health. If you keep all those akimbo,
Mhm.
then person A, B, or C, they have to try to just live in survival mode all the time. They never get to that next level, which is maybe something better for the next generation or whatever, or keeping a group and a class of people suppressed. Now, this has been going on so long. We used to call them third world countries. We used to call them
Mhm.
now maybe developing countries, but they have been countries that have been pillaged and pillaged and pillaged, right? It's extracted
Mhm.
so that we can satisfy our own consumption needs in the global north. And there's like that extraction could exist, and extraction doesn't have to be a 4-letter word if everybody in the value chain could benefit. But there is no lifting up the majority of the population when you keep everybody on their heels.
And I want to remind everybody that's listening to this, this is not like some ultra left, cute little cafe that's somewhere in fucking Seattle and, barely struggling and we need you to identify your pronouns before you can order your coffee. That's not what Biggby's is. Over 400 fucking cafes, guys.
Yeah.
This is a legit big fucking business. So anybody who's thinking like, oh, look, they it's so nice that they can have these altruistic kind of ideas about a supply chain, but they're not buying the same kind of coffee as us. How many tons are you guys doing a year?
So 2.6 million pounds per year, 1.3 is farm direct. We started the journey in 2018. Our finish line is in 2028. We're over the 50% line and moving very fast right now to that 100%. But yeah, the thing here is, Lee, unless you are inhuman, once you know this, you can't unknow, right? Once you know that you're drinking the tears of children in your coffee, you can't unknow it. That's why the black curtain exists. That's why that coffee curtain exists. Because if you knew as a consumer that you are drinking the tears of children and little droplets of pesticide and herbicide in your coffee, you would stop drinking that coffee. You would.
Have you
And
heard
when you
of...
go to something like,
Go
like
ahead.
the SCAA, the annual trade show, right? So you are that little coffee shop and you go to that, your feeling about coffee is pretty positive because the place is just crawling with manufacturers and different kinds of waffles and all these, different oat milk, hemp milk. What's the best? It just seems like it's all thriving and bubbling, but it's only about this side of the curtain, right? It's only where all the money is, We're not talking about producers. There'll be a country booth. And remember, I've already said that most of those countries, the business, the industry is corrupt within those countries. So the coffee producers they bring in, they're not going to sit there and tell you about the tears of children in your coffee. They're not.
No, that's
they're going to talk
inconvenient.
about, it's inconvenient.
And marketing people don't want you to talk about that because you're going to feel all kind of feelings. And who wants people to feel bad about anything? Nobody wants to cry into their coffee, Lee. Oh, so it's okay that the producers are crying into the beans, but it's not okay that you're crying into the cup.
Totally.
For the next episode,
it's inhuman.
it's
Like if you know and you continue on, it's inhuman, right? And that's why I wanted to come up with a solution. This is it right here.
And
everybody says you can't do it at scale. And that's one of the things we're trying to disprove. Right. By the time we get to 2018, we'll be buying somewhere between 5 and 6 million pounds of coffee a year. And I realize that compared to, Nestle and the other big, that we'll just barely have graduated to ankle biter, right? But we're not. Everybody's comfortable with the idea that roasters can do it at 10,000, 20,000 pounds a year. We're going to be talking about 5-something million pounds a year and growing. And
that's 3 years away.
Prove that
4
you can
years
do it.
away.
Yeah.
Almost 4 years away.
Correct. But we'll hit it before then. Our momentum is really high right now.
Okay. So the next episode, folks, we're going to talk about why the black curtain exists. If you thought this was a cracker of an episode, I can't fucking wait for the next one. Join us for the next episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward.